Hey y'all, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about some new releases. August releases are coming up super soon, and every single time I make this video, I keep thinking that we're gonna hit like the summer slump and not have many releases. And that is just not the case. I don't know if the summer slump is not a thing anymore, but I have 20 releases that I am going to be talking about today that are releasing this August. There are just so many good books coming out that I want to get my hands on. So we have 20 of them to talk about. Just like in all of the previous months, these are going to be broken down by release date. I have a whole playlist where I talk about the new releases by each month, so I will have that linked down in the description box. I will also try to link the playlist up in the cards. But without further ado, let's just get right into the releases. There are 5 books coming out on August 2nd that I'm really excited about. The first one being Husband Material by Alexis Hall, which is the sequel to Boyfriend Material. And the synopsis for this one is really short. It's pretty much just saying that Luke and Oliver are attending a whole bunch of weddings and they are feeling the pressure to get married themselves. And it sounds really cute. I've talked about this every time I talk about the series, but I will read anything that Luke and Oliver do. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I just love these characters and I want more books for them. So I'm really excited for this next Alexis Hall release. And then right after that, we have Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. Julia Whelan is one of my absolute favorite audiobook narrators, and I read her first book, My Oxford Year, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm really excited for this one because Julia Whelan is an audiobook narrator, and this is a book about audiobook narration. And so we're following a heroine who always wanted to be an actress, and now she is transitioning into audiobook narrating. And she finally agrees to do her first romance book. And she is teamed up with this like very acclaimed but secretive male narrator. And I assume it is their romance. And Julia Whelan is also narrating this book. So it's like narration inception, where she's writing a book about narration while narrating her own book. And I'm very excited for it. I think it's gonna be a really cool insight into audiobook narration, and so I am going to listen to this one on audio. I feel like that's the only way to read this book. And then after that is Wild as the Witch by Rachel Griffin. I read Rachel Griffin's debut book, Nature of Witches, and I really liked that book. I really liked the setting and the atmosphere, and I really enjoyed her writing. And this is another YA witchy fantasy, but in this one we are following a heroine who is a witch, and she has to keep a secret that she is a witch, and she accidentally uses magic in front of people, and so she has to leave her home and she moves to Washington. And while she is there, she comes in contact with a guy that works at, like, I think the nature preserve, and he absolutely hates witches, and he's very vocal about how much he hates witches. And she decides to get back at him by cursing him, but the curse misses and accidentally latches onto an owl, and then the owl flies away. And so she has to team up with her enemy and try to track down the owl before the curse spreads. And I'm sure it's an enemies to lovers romance. And like I said, I just really liked Rachel Griffin's writing. I found her atmosphere and descriptions to be very lush and just a very good time. And I'm excited to read her sophomore novel. After that is The Door at the End of the Stars by KJ Sutton. This is the same author as the Fortuna Sworn series, but I believe this is a standalone. Right now, the release date is set for August 2nd, but this is a self-pub book, so that release date is definitely flexible. It might move around, but this synopsis is so unique and so different, and I have no idea what to expect from this book. It's almost sci-fi-esque, so it's taking place in like a near future where you can essentially rent out your body and other people can inhabit your body and do things through your body. And you as the host are unaware of what is happening while somebody else is inhabiting your body. And we're following a heroine who does this, but something goes wrong and she still has awareness. And so she is witnessing the person that has taken over her body have an affair, and she is trying to figure out what's going on, what went wrong, how can she stop this? And that's all I know about it. I don't know who the romance is between. I don't know what direction this leads, if it leans more into the sci-fi stuff or if it leans more into the romance. interpersonal stuff. I have no idea, but I really like the Fortuna series and I'm excited to pick up something else from Kelsey. And then the last book on this day is one of my most anticipated books for the whole year, and that is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. And this is a mix between like magical elements and mystery with some romance in it. And I believe we are following like this small town, and many years ago somebody was murdered and somebody named August was blamed for the murder, and we are following our heroine who still lives in that small town, and August returns to the small town, and I believe it is them working together to try and figure out what actually happened all those years ago to their friend. And I think the island is magical, and I love magical nature, magical islands. It just does it for me every time. I love Adrienne Young's writing, and I think it is going to translate very well to an adult story, and I'm excited for her first adult novel. Can't wait for this. And then on August 3rd, we have Frat Wars Presidential Chaos by Saxon James. This is the third and final book in the Frat Wars series. This is just a really fun, zero angst, new adult romance. I have such a good time with this romance series. Like I said, there's no angst to this. This is just them being in college, having some parties, playing some pranks on each other, and falling in love, and it is such a good time. It's one of those books that like you can just pick up in between some other heavier things and just enjoy the ride. I really liked the first two books. This one is following the same fraternities, and we're following the presidents of each of the fraternities, and it is their romance. This whole series is romances. I'm excited to get their romance. Like I said, this is just no angst, good times only, and it's going to be great, especially at the time that I'm filming this. I'm reading all heavy dark romances, so I'm gonna need something like this. On to August 9th, we have 3 releases, and weirdly enough, these are all like horror thrillers, which is weird for me. But first up, we have Stay Awake by Megan Goldin. This is actually one of my favorite authors for thrillers. Megan Goldin wrote The Night Swim, which is one of my all-time favorite thrillers. And I believe this one deals with an amnesia plot, if I am not mistaken. It says that our heroine wakes up in the back of a taxi with no idea how she got there, and then she's dropped off at the door of a brownstone, and a stranger answers who claims to live in her apartment. As she reaches for her phone, she discovers it's missing, and in that place is a bloody knife. Her hands are scribbled in messages like graffiti that say, "You must stay awake." When she catches a glimpse of the local news, she is horrified to see reports of a crime scene where the victim's blood has been used to scrawl a message across the window, similar to the messages that are inked all over her hands. What did she do last night? And why does she remember nothing from the last 2 years? I think this sounds like so much fun. I'm really excited for this one, even though I don't read a ton of thrillers. This one sounds amazing. After that, we have not only a horror book, but a middle grade book, and that is Empty Smiles by Katherine Arden, and this is the 4th and final book in the Small Spaces series. This is the only middle grade book series that I actively read, and I love Katherine Arden's writing so much. It is so atmospheric and beautifully written. The Bear and the Nightingale series is one of my favorite fantasy series, and her work just translates perfectly to any age range. This series is, I know it's middle grade, but this series is straight up terrifying. And this cover, I can't look at it for too long because it creeps me the heck out. If you are unfamiliar with this series, we are following 3 friends who I believe are around like 10 to 12-ish. And in the first book, it takes place in fall, and they are going to this farm for a school field trip. And this creepy scarecrow makes all of their classmates and teachers disappear, and they need to figure out how to rescue their classmates and get past this creepy scarecrow. And all of the books in this series take place in a different season. So we had fall, winter, and spring, and this last one takes place, I assume, at a creepy summer carnival based off this cover. And it is them trying to continuously battle this evil character. I'm actually kind of scared of carnivals in general, so the fact that this is a horror book set at a carnival scares me quite a lot. And then the final one is These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall. And I did not know this, but I was watching, I don't remember if I was watching a live or a video over on Riley from Riley Marie's channel, but she said that this is actually a series. So it's not listed as a series anywhere online on like Goodreads or anything like that. However, apparently Rules for Vanishing and Our Last Echoes are the first and second book, and this is the third book. I don't know how these are all connected, but I have been told that this is actually part of a series. This is a YA horror thriller. This one is following our heroine who is left their, like her family's ancestral home, but it comes with one condition. She must stay on the grounds for 1 full year. But for as long as our heroine can remember, this house has like haunted her in her dreams, and now she has to survive a year in this terrifying house. It says, why is the house built like a labyrinth, and what is digging the holes that appear in the woods each night, and why does the house itself seem to be making her sick? I love a haunted house story. On to August 16th, we have The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. This is the sequel to The Jasmine Throne, and this is a fantasy with a romance in it, and I really loved The Jasmine Throne. I know some people were disappointed by that book, but I just loved how accessible that fantasy world was. Following this world where magic used to exist, and all of the people that had magic were killed off. And now we are following a couple of different characters, and a couple of them have magic, but they are hiding. You're kind of following all of the political maneuverings of people who are trying to overthrow those in power, people who are just trying to survive, people who are trying to bring back magic, and how all of these different characters come together. I'm not going to go into the plot for this one because it will completely spoil book one, but I'm very, very excited for this. And then after that, we have Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, and this is a new contemporary romance. We are following a heroine who is writing her dissertation and trying to get a PhD, and she is obsessed with all things true crime. She has to return a small town where her father lived, helping her brother clean out this home, and while she is there, she becomes obsessed with the fact that she believes his neighbor to be a serial killer, and it is a romance between the two of them. I love the mix of romance with true crime aspect, which is super popular right now. I think that's a really timely, fun mix for a romance. And then the last book that I have on here is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This book, I want to say, was released in like 2014, but apparently it blew up on TikTok and is now being traditionally published. It releases on August 16th. I believe in this we are following two addicts. One, I believe, is an alcoholic and the other is a sex addict, and they have a very unhealthy and addictive relationship. They're very codependent, and I believe it is their romance. I was sent an arc of this. I don't know if it is something I'm super excited for. It's something I plan to give a try. I don't know if it's going to be for me, but I do plan to give this one a try. And I know it is very popular, so I wanted to throw it on this list. On to August 23rd, we have Love on the Brain by Allie Hazelwood, which is Allie Hazelwood's next STEMinist story. And I believe this one is another enemies to lovers romance. I believe our heroine is an engineer, and I believe she has like an enemies thing with this guy Levi, and when her stuff starts to go missing, she has to work with him in order to figure out what is going on and who it is. So it's an enemies to lovers situation. I don't need to know much about the series before going in because I just love Allie Hazelwood's characters and humor and banter, and I'm just very, very excited for this book. I'll read anything that Allie Hazelwood writes, in whole honesty. And then after that, we have Heartbreaker by Sarah MacLean. This is the second book in the Hell's Bells series. I don't know who this is following. I don't know anything about it. We're following this group of women who are trying to take back some power, and they are all trying to work together to take down some bad people and help women, and it is their romances, begrudging romances, because all of them don't want to have to need a man, but in this time period, you, as a woman, you couldn't own anything or have anything of your own, and so it is them trying to take down some bad people, and take back some power for themselves, but they're also having romances. Like I said, I don't know who this one follows or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of go in not knowing. I do love Sarah MacLean's like feminist twist on historical. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but I think her stories are a really fun, good time, so I'm excited for this one. Then we have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. I am not positive about that pronunciation, so I do need to look this up once we get closer to release date and I can listen to the audiobook. But this is, from what I understand, like a really cozy paranormal romance. As one of the few witches in Britain, our heroine has to hide her magic, but she has this online account where she pretends to be a witch, but she doesn't think that anyone is like actually taking it seriously. However, someone does, and she receives a letter asking her to travel to this like remote house and teach these three young girls to be witches and like how to control their magic. And so she goes there and she immediately gets like sucked into the small town and all the secrets and everything like that. It says there's an absent archaeologist, a retired actor, two long-suffering caretakers, and Jamie, the handsome yet prickly librarian of Nowhere House. And I assume it is her romance with Jamie. It sounds just like the perfect, cozy, found family, small town, paranormal romance story, and it just sounds so cute and so much fun. Lastly, on this day, we have The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Megan Bannen. And this is another, I believe this is fantasy romance, and it doesn't say on here, but I think there's necromancy in here. I'm not positive about this. This is from Orbit, so there's definitely going to be fantasy elements in here. But it says that Hart is a marshal tasked with patrolling the strange and magical wilds of Teneria. Mercy has been single-handedly keeping Birdsall and Son undertakers afloat in defiance of sullen jerks like Hart, who seems to have a gift for showing up right when her patience is the thinnest. After another exasperating run-in with Mercy, Hart finds himself penning a letter simply addressed to a friend. Much to his surprise, an anonymous letter comes back in return, and a tentative friendship is born. If only Hart knew he's been bearing his soul to the person who infuriates him the most. As the dangers from Teneria grow closer, so do unlikely correspondence, but can their blossoming romance survive the fated discovery that their pen pals are their worst nightmares? So, a pen pal, enemies to lovers romance, but like I said, I know that there is a fantasy element in here. Orbit always does fantasy, so there has to be some sort of fantastical element in here. I just don't know what it is. Onto the last 2 days of the month. On August 30th, we have Lord of the Fly Fest by Goldy Moldovsky. I read this author's debut, which was The Mary Shelley Club, and I loved that book. This one is a Lord of the Flies retelling, obviously, but we are following our heroine, and I believe she's like a blogger or some sort of influencer, and she gets invited to this concert on an island, and when she gets there, it's not at all what she expects, and they're all stranded on this island, and I assume it becomes Lord of the Flies-esque, and I am very excited. I love how Goldy Moldovsky interweaves like classic horror slasher into her stories, and I'm hoping that this one has a very similar vibe. And then one that I have on my radar is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. This is another YA fantasy romance, and like I said, I'm not the biggest YA reader anymore. However, this one is said to be a highly romantic, gothic-infused world of wealth, desire, and betrayal. And once I saw romantic and gothic, I was like, well, maybe I need to give it a try. I haven't read the synopsis yet, so we're going to kind of go through it together here. It says, orphaned as a baby, 19-year-old Signa has been raised by a string of guardians, each more interested in her wealth than her well-being. Each has met an untimely end. Her remaining relatives are the elusive Hawthorns, an eccentric family living at Thorn Grove, an estate both glittering and gloomy. Its patriarch mourns his late wife through wild parties, while his son grapples for control of the family's waning reputation, and his daughter suffers from a mysterious illness. But when their mother's restless spirit appears claiming she was poisoned, Signa realizes that the family she depends on could be in grave danger and enlists the help of a surly stable boy to hunt down the killer. However, her best chance of uncovering the murder is an alliance with Death himself, a fascinating, dangerous shadow who has never been far from her side. Though he's made her life a living hell, death shows Cigna that their growing connection may be powerful and more irresistible than she ever dared imagine. Well, now I really want to read it, because if that's a romance with death, I think I need that. And then lastly, on the 31st, we have Lunatic by Onley James. This is the sixth book in the Necessary Evil series, and this one is following Archer and Mac. And Archer is one of the Mulvaney siblings that we know probably the least about. He is believed to be a gambling addict as well as an alcoholic, and he is always sent on his own missions. He is now back in Vegas, and I believe he is having a romance with a man named Mac. I believe it's like a second chancey sort of thing. That's all I know about it. This is another self-pub book, so the release date might change, but this one is coming up very soon. Right now it's slotted for the 31st. So that is all 20 releases for August. Sorry this video is so long, but all of these books will be down in the description box so that you can go find them, look them up yourself. But that is going to be it for this video. Let me know if any of these are on your anticipated list, and I will catch y'all in my next video. Bye!